Jack is a great guy. He's written a fantastic book. Everybody's talking about it. Go get it. And he's been my friend right from the beginning of this whole beautiful event. And we're going to turn it around and make our country great again. Amen.
All right, Jack Posobiec, we're back on with Leland Vittert. He's here joining us from NewsNation. We're not talking about the news. We're talking about his new book, Born Lucky, all about the role that parents can have and the incredible role that parents have, and coming forward with his own story of growing up with a diagnosis of autism. So Leland, where we left everyone, the cliffhanger was that they're in the waiting room, they're looking at the linoleum floors, they've got that disgusting prison halogen lighting, which I hate so much. What happens next?
So they're waiting for their little boy, 6 years old, me, to be brought back after all of this testing. And the woman says, there's very, very difficult things going on with him and hard to understand what's going on inside his mind, meaning mine. So I had huge behavioral issues. Forget birthday parties or play dates. That wasn't happening. But if a kid touched me in school, I'd turn around and slug him. And I was a fat little kid, so I could do some damage. That was the behavioral issues, and couldn't relate to kids my own age. Number two, terrible sensory issues. If there were socks on my feet that I didn't like, or a jacket I didn't like, or whatever, I would just melt down. And third, big learning disability. So an IQ test is the halves of an IQ are put together to form your IQ score. My two halves had a 70-point spread. It was the biggest spread they'd ever seen between the two halves. 20-point was a learning disability. She said to my parents, "We never seen anything like this. It's very difficult to understand what's going on inside his head." So, Jack, you're a father. Any father goes, "All right, what do we do?" And no one says there's not much you can do. And the woman goes, just sort of meet him where he's at. My dad goes, "Is there anything we can do?" And then she goes, "Generally not." And so I wrote Born Lucky to give parents the hope that my parents didn't have, that they could make such a difference. My dad decided he was going to adapt me to the world. So no special time on tests, no accommodations in school, no discussions with teachers or principals or anybody about my diagnosis. And he said, "Look, he's not going to be good at school. He's not going to be good at having friends. He's not going to be good at athletics." The three things that kids normally get self-esteem from. So he started when I was 5 or 6 years old, having me do 200 push-ups a day to try and teach me what self-esteem was, what hard work was. He said, there's two things you can control in life: your character and your work ethic. And if you take pride in those two, that is going to make all of the difference for you. And that began him being my first, and for 18 years, only friend, as he helped me adapt all the way through high school and college.
That's incredible. Now, do you still do the 200 push-ups a day?
No. No. I still run 5 miles about 3 times a week, and I lift the other 3 times a week. So the physical fitness part, and I think it's interesting.
But you kept the physical fitness, of course.
Yeah.
Of course.
Well, no, and I got to tell you, as autism has become in the news, and we didn't write this knowing that Bobby Kennedy was going to start making autism the scientific question of our time, which I'm so happy it is now, and hopeful that nobody has to go through the hell that I went through as a kid. But I think the push for physical fitness for kids, especially kids who are having a hard time, whatever that means, autism, ADHD, anxiety, spectrum, whatever it is, it was such an enormous part of my life and so helpful, and still is. I'm just happy people are talking about it.
Well, no, that's exactly right. And so one of the pieces that I mean, it just shocked me that it jumped out at me in the book, other than the 200 push-ups, was the fact that your father quit his job to be able to spend more time with you. You referred to him as a full-time parent coach. So how does that even work from just a household perspective?
It's a great question. First to tell you that Dad was fortunate. We were fortunate. He had started a few companies and done quite well, but certainly was in the high, the pinnacle of his career. He was, doing phenomenal, there was so much more he could have done, and knew that. And he said, "I'm going to take a step back." And he said to me that I knew your only chance, meaning my only chance, was for him to be there before I went to school and when I got home. And I said, "Well, Dad, as we were working on this book," because he didn't tell me I had this diagnosis until I was in my 20s. We never really talked about it. But as I started interviewing him for the book, I said, "What would you have done if you couldn't have quit your job? If you couldn't have been financially secure? And he said, simple. He said, I would have worked the night shift because I realized I was going to be your only friend. And the only chance you had was for me to be there with you, to put you back together every day. And by that, I mean, there was no taking away the adversity. There was no accommodations or, behavioral accommodations or academic accommodations. He said, you're going to have to endure the bullying. You're going to have to go through the isolation and the physical bullying and the emotional heartaches. I mean, you think about it, there was a teacher, I think, you know what kids do. The kids were so bad to me in 5th grade. My dad came to visit me one day and they had put me with the girls in PE for a few months. He found that out. Imagine what that does to a father, because I was so bullied. But by 7th and 8th grade, I was in class one day. So the kids were mean to me and the teachers were too. I had an art teacher who didn't think I was going to become Picasso. And this art teacher said in front of the entire class, if my dog was as ugly as you, Vittert, I'd shave its ass and make it walk backwards. Think about doing that to a kid. And so I'd come home. I was totally distraught, as I was every day. And my dad sort of patched me back together. What Dad didn't tell me, Jack, was that middle school is great training for a Washington newsroom. And then he would make me...
Inside joke, but that's a good one.
It's true. And then he would get me, he would put me back together and he would make me, go to school the next day. But what I didn't know until we started working on the book, and I interviewed him and my mom, is that, he would leave my bedroom every night after 2 or 3 hours of me taking my frustrations and emotions out on him, that he would go downstairs late into the night and sit in the living room and cry himself. Just because of the emotional toll this was all taking on him. And I just think it's a remarkable story also about my dad. And, it's really great and honored so many have come on the Born Lucky journey, and it's a New York Times bestseller. And I said to my dad last night when I saw him, I said, Dad, being a bestseller author is nice. I said, but you are the subject of a best-selling New York Times book, which I think is a really fitting tribute to all he did and all he sacrificed.
I mean, I can tell how much you love your dad and how important your dad is. And, my dad, look, we didn't have that kind of situation, but I mean, we've got that kind of relationship, and my dad is absolutely the person that I go to for all of it. And, I remember when Charlie got shot, my dad just gave me a call, and he was just calling me like every single day. Even so, I flew out to Phoenix, but then my dad was still calling me just every day. Hey, just calling, literally just that, just calling, just checking in on you, making sure you're good, boy. Sonny boy. He always calls me Sonny boy. I noticed I pulled some of the foundational parenting principles out of this though. Have no expectations about the future, right? You're not setting expectations. Never allow your child to feel they've disappointed you. You mentioned the depository of the frustrations, just listening, literally just listening before school, late into night. And then, and I love this line, by the way, the currency of high school and, middle school as well is not the currency of life. Man, we put so much pressure on kids right when hormones are hitting them. We do the hierarchy, we're ranking and stacking everybody. And it's like, for what? Like what, and there's that joke about people peaking in high school that exists. And it's like, none of us, go back to any of that. Guess what? You can't take it with you. I love so much of what's in there. We've got a minute left. Tell people just final sentence on the book and where they can go get it.
Well, Born Lucky is back in stock on Amazon. I know Jack is going to tweet out the link and put it on social media. Much bigger social media follower than I have. Born Lucky, so we'd be honored to come on this journey with us. And I'll tell you, Jack, you brought up, Charlie Kirk's funeral, where this started. The only other time I ever felt the kind of emotion I felt at Charlie Kirk's funeral was in Tahrir Square the night Mubarak resigned. And that's sort of one of the stories in the book about the rest of my life, and what my dad was able to set me up for was to be able to go overseas, become a foreign correspondent, and now have a wife and a wonderful chance that I would have never had he not shown all that dedication.
No, and you've been all around the world. You've covered so many, obviously, very tight situations, and it, it all started with 200 push-ups a day with Dad back home. Born Lucky is the book. Leland Vittert, go check it out. Ladies and gentlemen, as always, you have my permission to lay ashore.